Hello, I'm Julia Joggers. I'm the COO of WorkStep, and today we have Jon Cox from NFI with us. Jon, can you start by giving us a quick overview of your role at NFI and your experience working with frontline teams?
I'm Jon Cox. I'm the Vice President of Talent at NFI Industries. NFI is a third-party logistics provider located up in Camden, New Jersey, serving most of North America. I've spent most of my career, the past 15, 20 years or so, working in this industry or a similar industry where we have a large amount of frontline workers, and we're building development programs for the frontline workers. So everything from, training and development to career pathing, all things talent management, focus on that hourly frontline workforce.
When people think of career growth, they often think of climbing the ladder. Why do you think that traditional mindset doesn't always work for the frontline workforce?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think that traditional mindset is kind of going out the window for all workforces, but in particular for the frontline workforce, it becomes challenging. When you think about climbing the ladder, you think about your own vertical, what's available to you within your location or within your department. And for the frontline worker, a lot of times it's not, 4 or 5 people working for one supervisor in an office environment. Oftentimes, depending on the size of the location, it can be 20, 30, upwards 40 people, depending on the size, all vying for one position. And so if you're only thinking about your upward trajectory or your career growth in terms of the person you're reporting to, that's a lot of people competing for one position. And they often don't see outside of what's available to them within their own location. And so it's really about those opportunities that they become limited for the frontline worker. And it makes that challenge of how do you grow your career even more difficult.
And so if climbing the ladder isn't always the most effective plan for frontline workers, there's horizontal mobility. How would you define that, and why is it such a critical piece of career growth in any supply chain and logistics company?
I think this concept's been around for a while, and we're really starting to wrap our arms around how to, effectively address it. So when you think of horizontal mobility, it's the concept of, again, not just going straight up the ladder, but you may take an opportunity that is of a similar role in a different department, or it may be a horizontal movement over here to learn a different set of experiences. And so you're moving around to different places in the organization or different departments to really build your broader set of experiences and build that acumen across different locations and different places so that you can then move up. So it may be you're moving over to move up or move over to move back to move up. It's just broadening the kind of set of opportunities for which you can build your career.
Are there any other challenges that the frontline workers face when it comes to career growth? You've talked about the limited number of roles available. You've talked about, needing to look elsewhere to expand the pool of opportunities. Anything else that you think about as a limiting factor for career growth for the frontline?
I think oftentimes in the front line, we make the mistake of taking our best materials handler, our best forklift driver, and we promote them to be a supervisor. And we haven't always given them the proper development and training to be a supervisor. I think that the transferable skills from being really productive on the floor into being really effective as a supervisor, they're not always the same as it may be in a more traditional office environment. As a company and as leaders in this space, we're particularly challenged to do a better job of identifying what skill sets will make someone ready to grow their career, and how can we start investing in them earlier so that we can build that skill set so they're ready to move on up the ladder, if you will, or across into different positions.
Earlier, you mentioned that NFI is starting to really embrace horizontal mobility as a way to develop and retain talent. Can you talk a little bit about why or why now?
Yeah, so we've obviously partnered with WorkStep, and we've been really taking a look at the data and what it tells us. And so, WorkStep is a great partner for us to understand the employee experience through these ongoing surveys that we have. And one of the consistent themes that we've been seeing, regardless of location, regardless of division of our organization, is career growth has been identified as a need or a big opportunity for our employees. Employees are asking for career growth. And then when you look at what the leaders are saying, they're finding it challenging to be able to answer that question for their employees. For some of the things we've just talked about, right? For a limited number of opportunities, or not understanding I'm not leaving. I don't plan on going anywhere. So how can I develop my employee if I'm not going anywhere? What opportunities do they have? And so we really wanted to focus our survey data into actionable opportunities. And so we, as an organization, said, what can we do to help leaders be more actionable on this career growth issue? And so it really led us down the path of, okay, we need to really institutionalize this concept of horizontal or career mobility beyond just the four walls that they're in. And so we really took an intentional approach to build out a program to not just build in the mindset of mobility, but make it actionable, to build out pathways and an actual program that leaders and employees could tap into so that they knew how they could move around our organization.
Now I would love to talk a little bit about how you've made it work. So you all decided that this is something you want to invest in. How do you ensure that managers and leaders support and encourage internal mobility rather than seeing it as a disruption?
I think where we found success was really taking a three-pronged approach here. First, we started with internal marketing, and that's to address that mindset. I think it's not abnormal to our organization or any other organization similar to this, where leaders want to hold on to their employees, and it may be viewed as a loss or a failure if an employee leaves your department to go to another department or to another division. And so we wanted to address that mindset right off the bat. So we really took an intentional approach to marketing the concept of career mobility across our organization. And thankfully, we have a CEO and leader of our organization who was very passionate about this. So we were able to get him to communicate broadly to the whole organization through a nice video and an email. We're seeing that we want people to do this. We want you to look across our organization and take these opportunities to grow your experience. It's good for you, the employee, and it's good for us as an organization for you to have broad experiences across the company. So that's kind of step one, is how do we market the mindset? How do we really encourage leaders to think differently about that? Step two, though, but we then needed to empower employees to know how to do it. And so, again, it came down to communicating to employees in their locations. We might have an employee sitting in a warehouse and there's an opportunity for them to advance to one of our transportation terminals only 20 miles down the road. And they may not even know that that terminal exists, and much less even think that that terminal's a part of our own organization. And so we started seeing targeted communications regionally, communicating opportunities that existed so that employees could see what's near them and how could they grow their career beyond, again, the four walls they sat within. I think the final third piece of that three-pronged approach was then to empower leaders. You may have an opening or they may have a growth opportunity to see a broader pool of talent available to them. And so much like we're advertising positions to employees, we're also now gathering pools of employees who might be right for a position. But it's, again, thinking outside the box. It's not just that typical set of experiences that you might typically look for, but rather looking for employees that have skill sets and experiences that would translate into roles, and providing that to the leaders. So they're now thinking about their slates of candidates differently than before. We really found a lot of success of addressing it in that three-pronged approach.
It sounds like with the three-pronged approach, there's been a little bit of evolution. Can you talk a little bit more around what things used to look like, what you implemented, and then how things have evolved since then?
It's very common for leaders to want to hold on to talent, and by not negative intent at all. It's simply just, I have great talent. I want to invest in them and I want to develop them. I want to see them grow within my purview of responsibility. And so I think early on, it was that mindset of, oh, is this really okay? Is this what we want? We want employee. It's okay that my employee has left my division and gone over for this opportunity in another division. And I think just really encouraging that mentality to take hold. And what was successful for us was to tell the success stories that would happen. And so this kind of comes back to our internal marketing approach. When we would have a success story, when someone would take that chance of leaving maybe the division they'd spent 15 years of their career in and taking an opportunity to grow in a different division with a slightly different industry, we marketed that and we told the story. We would interview them. We would, put together an employee profile and we would send that out across the organization so people could see, oh, wow, if so-and-so can do it, I can do it as well. And look how they found success doing that. I think that also helped leaders see, oh, wow, this person did it, and that's been celebrated. And so this is a good thing, not something that I should, be resistant to, but rather I should encourage it for my employees as well. So it's been a nice evolution, and it's continuing to evolve as we continue down this path as well.
Speaking of success stories, would love to hear about any, specific employee that comes to mind that successfully transitioned through NFI's internal mobility program, the impact it had on their career, the organization, and anything else.
Yeah, a couple come to mind, and one was one of our earlier successes. We had an individual, he was a senior vice president of one of our largest divisions out in the West Coast in our warehousing division, our distribution warehousing division. And an opportunity for a president role came open in our port services division. And so, similar, but a different division. And we hadn't typically seen movement from one division to another at that level. And there's no higher level to go into a president position. And so when he took that chance and he moved into that position, that was one of the biggest signals that, okay, if we're going to put someone at the top of a division when they hadn't worked in that specific industry before, and he's been there now for over a year, and has been very successful, and has shared his story broadly about how he came in, he leveraged his leadership skills as he learned a new industry, built up his team around him, and it has grown the division and has found a lot of success there. Again, there's no greater story than when you can start at the top like that. And so that's been a big win for the organization, a big win for him, and a big win for that division. And then another more recent one that we had was from our brokerage group. So that group is not necessarily one that's working out in the front line in warehouses or terminals, but they are in an office environment. And we had a director in our brokerage group that saw an opportunity in that port services group. And so going from a traditional office environment to a very operational field location in a leadership position, that was another big change. And so for us to be able to, help him navigate that change, he's found success in that role. To share that success for others, it's really opened the eyes of our employees to see, wow, those are big changes, big, dramatic changes in some places in terms of like the way that you work, and they're doing it and doing it well. It's been great for our organization.
Thanks for sharing those stories. And now for, let's say, another company is looking to implement a horizontal mobility program. What advice would you have for them in getting started?
I think sometimes we tend to boil the ocean when it comes down to how do we get started on big things like this. And so I would say start where you have a champion. Employees often hear from HR about the concept of things like this, like mobility around the organization or different development opportunities. But employees really want to hear from their leadership that this is something that they endorse and this is something that would be good for them, good for the organization. So I would say if you're not sure where to start, find your champion, find a leader in the operations that is passionate about this concept and who will endorse and support this concept and empower them to help communicate to the organization why we want to do it. Another thing that we did was, again, not boiling the ocean. We started small. We started with a select group of roles, and we actually started at the director level on up, and we have since expanded it, but we started there. And, we gave it what I would call a white glove service, where sometimes we build out the programs, we build out the communications, but at the end of the day, sometimes an employee needs to go talk to somebody and say, hey, I think this could work for you. Go talk to a hiring leader and say, hey, I think this employee might be a good fit, and really serve as that talent broker, if you will. And so again, just, start small, get out there, find a leader who will support what you're trying to do, leverage that leader's influence across the organization, start small with a select set of roles and really try to, handhold those roles and handhold those employees through the opportunities, and then communicate successes and let it grow from there.
Last question that I have is, what's one piece of advice that you would give to HR and operations leaders who want to create more career pathways for their frontline teams?
I think I would say view it as empowerment. I think leaders want to help their employees, right? And I think sometimes when you're having a development conversation with employees, sometimes we feel powerless as a leader because we see an employee who's ready to move, they're ready to take on something more, and we just don't have the opportunity for them. And so when you think about horizontal mobility across a large organization, it's empowering for a leader to say, look, the opportunity isn't here for you right now, but there are opportunities over here. And I want to connect you with those other opportunities. That's again, that's not saying, it's not throwing your hands up in the air and saying, I don't have anything for you. It's saying, I'm going to get involved in finding the right opportunity for you someplace in our organization, because again, it's good for you and it's good for the organization. So view it as an empowering conversation. And I think that really just flips the lens by which everyone looks at these types of opportunities across a big company.
Well, Jon, thank you so much for joining us. It's been so helpful to hear what you have to say on this topic, and we'll be talking soon.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.